Welcome to Around Montgomery County on WSMI. An issue talked about plenty around Montgomery County and every other county among the 102 in the state of Illinois is the impact of tariffs. And we're talking about the impact of tariffs on the farm. Our guest today is the Illinois Director of Agriculture, Jerry Costello II. Let's head to the Department of Agriculture headquarters on the State Fairgrounds on WSMI.
Yeah, Sean, so I would tell you, you're asking, the multi-billion-dollar question there as far as, the impact of tariffs. And it's, mind you, these are things that are changing daily, which is absolute insanity. And, farmers, just like any other businessmen or women, they need stability and predictability. So if we look at the impact of tariffs, number one, they've driven input costs up, drastically, and they've also driven commodity prices, so what farmers are receiving for their crops, down because of a lack of markets to sell into. I'll give you some examples. So if we look at the input costs that have gone up, and this is the last 9 months, so since January, the average tariff or tax, because tariff is the same word as tax, on nitrogen went from 0% to 10%. The average tariff on just foods in general, ag foods, went from 4% to 15%. The average tariff on herbicide, insecticides, pesticides is up 20% in the last 9 months. The average tariff on ag machinery is up 13% in 9 months and 16% on new tractors. So at the same point in time, all of those input costs have gone up. At the same point in time, we look at the prices of commodities that have gone down. So corn, right now today trading at, a little bit below $4. If we look at beans trading somewhere in that probably $9.60, $9.70 range. To give you an idea, the break even for the average farmer in the state of Illinois is about $4.65 on corn and somewhere around $11.50 on beans. So, we're looking at farmers losing somewhere around $2 a bushel on beans and losing, somewhere in the neighborhood of, 70 to 75 cents a bushel on corn. So if we're looking at the, what should be a pretty bumper crop or bumper yield, we're looking at somewhere in the area of north of 200 bushels an acre average in the state for corn, and somewhere around 60 plus, 63, 64 bushels an acre for soybeans. So, you can do the math of, 70 to 75 cents times 200 per acre on corn, and somewhere around $2 times, say, 60 to 63, 64 bushels on soybeans. That's the average loss that a farmer in the state of Illinois will take on their crop primarily because of the tariffs that have been implemented. And I can go on because if you look at the last time these tariffs were implemented in the Trump administration, I'll give you an example. 2016, this is soybean specific. The United States had 62% of the soybeans that were exported to China. The tariffs were put in place by the Trump administration in 17. In 18, we went from 62% of soybeans exported to China to 18%, from 62% down to 18%. Well, guess who went up to 82% in 2018? Brazil. Somebody who's known as a pretty smart guy in history, Albert Einstein, I believe, said that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. I'm very, very concerned. If you look at the soybeans that we export to China normally, so last year, 2024, the state of Illinois exported $1.4 billion worth of soybeans to China. In 2023, we exported $953 million in soybeans to China. If we go back to 2017, so this is original Trump tariffs on China. 2017, we exported $1.3 billion in soybeans to China. In 2018, after the original Trump tariffs, we exported $116 million of soybeans to China. So a loss of about $1.2 billion to Illinois farmers in soybean exports to China alone because of the tariffs last time around.
Well, the harvest is well underway, so what effects are people going to see at the elevators out there?
There are definitely visible effects. And so I would tell you, some major areas of concern, and bluntly, because crop prices have been lower last year, but even lower than that this year, you have a lot of farmers who are storing a ton of grain. So grain storage, and about 65% has been stored actually on farm in silos. The ability or capacity to store grain is greatly diminished right now because of how much grain is already in storage because of depressed commodity prices. So what happens is during what should be a bumper or somewhere close to a record harvest this year, farmers are going to be forced to sell into a depressed commodity market. So, when you're storing grain and prices go up or down, just like the stock market, you have what's called an unrealized gain or loss. When you actually sell into that market, you have a realized gain or loss. And farmers who don't have the ability to store their crop this year because of a diminished storage capacity, they're going to be forced to take a realized loss, which is, it's very, very scary.
I know we have the grain tours just around the corner.
The one thing that I'm aware of is, and Governor Pritzker is very good at preaching this as well, is control what you have control over. What a lot of people do, and this goes for any scenario in life, business, what have you, you can't spin your wheels on things, that you don't have control over. What we can in the state of Illinois, we can control, number one, make sure people are reaching out to their congressmen and women, the federal government about trade policy, because obviously that's something that's federal. On the Illinois state-specific side of things, what we're doing is things like we've got our annual grain tour, which we've split into two grain tours, Latin America and Asia and the Middle East. We have September 29th to October 2nd, so right around the corner here. We have 6 different countries coming over for our grain tour, which last year that tour did $159 million in trade, which was up $30 million from the year before. But we have countries like China that are going to be involved in that grain tour. And what we have to do is concentrate on not only building new relationships, but retaining the relationships that we currently have in these tumultuous times. Such an unstable and unsure economy for farmers. The countries that will be here are China, Vietnam, Egypt, Jordan, Singapore. We're trying to do everything that we can to build and maintain those relationships. A few months ago, I went on a trip with Governor Pritzker to Mexico, and it was specifically to make sure that the Mexican people and the Mexican government know that we want to be a good trading partner with Mexico. To give you an idea of the type of trade that we do with Mexico, we do about $1.7 billion in just corn alone to Mexico. We do $300 million in soybeans to Mexico. So, I mean, those are big numbers. 65, 66 million in pork that we export to Mexico. And here's another thing that's very interesting is, you know, we've gone after China, Mexico, Canada with these tariffs federally in the last 9 months. If you look at the United States, about 48% of our ag trade, it's somewhere between 47 and 48%, are those three countries. In the state of Illinois, our farm economy, we're really a microcosm of the national because about 46 to 47% of our ag trade from the state of Illinois is China, Canada, Mexico. So, I mean, the trade policies that have been so hostile towards those countries are really drastically affecting farmers and the farm economy in the state of Illinois, but to be honest with you, also in the Midwest. You know, the previous Trump administration, those tariff policies that I spoke about, they probably affected the Midwest the largest during the first Trump administration. You know, there was a loss to, for instance, the state of Iowa of close to $1.5 billion in, you know, overall trade. I think the state of Illinois was like 1.4 billion. Kansas was close to $1 billion. And those are all, I mean, major losses. I'll give you some more numbers, and these are USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture numbers coming out of the federal government. So the overall loss, when you look at the last Trump administration tariff policy, was about $27 billion worth of ag trade. You'll remember that there was for lack of a better term, we'll call it a bailout. There was a farm subsidy program that was about $23 billion that came out. I think that was, you know, during 2018-19. So there's still a net loss of $4 billion to the ag community. But when you put all that in perspective, here's another thing that's important to realize. And these are USDA statistics again. For every $1 billion worth of ag exports, it creates 8,000 jobs. So if you take that billion and you look at the 27 billion lost, the 8,000 number, that's 216,000 jobs that were lost because of those tariff and trade policies. USDA would also say for every dollar that we export, every dollar's worth of goods we export, it creates $1.27 of economic activity in the United States. Well, if you look at that 27 billion that we lost actually computes to about $37 billion of lost economic activity in the United States. So these are staggering numbers. And to me, it's why these tariff trade policies make no sense.
Well, and I'll just close on this note. And and I brought up, and it probably wasn't the perfect comparison to bring up your father, because I know a lot of times when you talk about the hard times, you talk about the 1980s, and I realize now he didn't succeed in all price until the 80s were almost over. But
88 is when he succeeded him. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but just anything that just says 1980s to you, if something isn't done here in the next few months.
Absolutely. So here's what farmers are experiencing and the agricultural economy is experiencing. So we're experiencing, currently high land costs, currently very high equipment costs. Interest rates are still fairly high. All inputs in general are high at a time when commodity prices are low. So What is nuts to me is so much of this is self-induced by these trade policies under the current administration. And so, a lot of this we are creating. And what I would suggest is that people reach out to their congressmen or women, reach out to the U.S. Department of Agriculture and, express the concern about these trade policies. If you're a corn grower, reach out to the National Corn Growers or the Illinois Corn Growers, soybean growers. Same thing with the Illinois Soybean Association or the National Soybean Association. So we're in very troubling times, and it probably, I hate to say this, the way it's setting up, it does look to possibly parallel the tough times that were experienced during the 80s. What we can do as a state is support our farmers to the best of our ability, to also make sure that we're reaching out to our federal elected officials, which we are, and we're talking to them about what we believe is bad policy that needs to be corrected if at all possible. So we're doing everything we can to support our farmers, to make sure anything we can do to create economic activity and to try to help or bolster trade during these times, we're doing everything we can to maintain those relationships.
So shortly after that interview, word came from the White House that the president plans to use tariff revenue to offer cash bailouts for farmers struggling with trade uncertainty. Shades of 2017, the details of that arrangement are going to roll out, it appears, in the days to come. So stay tuned. That's Around Montgomery County. I'm Sean Billette saying so long till next week when I bring you the Forum on WSMI.